everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Pelvic Detective. My name is Ingrid Harm Hernandez, and I'm a pelvic PT. And over the years, I've been so fortunate to be involved in different programs. I was the co-director of our Women's Health PT residency program at Duke. I did research with our urogynecologist, did lots of great things, and now I really want to be able to share all that information. And the way that we're going to do that is I'm partnering with Desert Harvest on a series of videos that are going to go over everything pelvic health related. So that's your musculoskeletal system, that is the area in your pelvis, that is all the different terminology associated with that. It is diagnoses that would be associated with it, some self-help techniques, and we're going to do great interviews with some real awesome folks who specialize in this area. So you can see a lot of different things that'll help you understand a little bit better what's happening in your pelvis and become a detective in your own pelvic health and really help resolve issues that you or your loved ones are having. My book, The Musculoskeletal Mystery, How to Solve Your Pelvic Floor Symptoms, is a great partner to these series of videos and really help you understand and go more in depth than what we can possibly do in a video. So please check that out. I want everybody to understand that these videos are just for educational purposes only. They're not meant to diagnose or treat a condition. What we hope is that you can really start to discover what's going on in your body and really get the right help from the right resources. So today's topic is going to be terminology. And that's important because there is such a misunderstanding out there, and you hear so many different things about what is going on in the pelvic floor that it can be very, very, very confusing to understand what's actually happening. So we're going to go over some very basic terminology today that sometimes we'll use in some future videos and certainly are illustrated in the book, but I think this will be a good starting point. So the first thing to know is our pelvic muscles are the same as all other skeletal muscles in the body. And what that means is they are voluntary. So in other words, they respond to your commands, at least most of the time, the way that you want them to, all right? They can get tight, they can get restricted, they can have trigger points just like any muscle in your body. So that whether that's your biceps, your legs, your back, the pelvic floor muscles and the pelvic muscles are exactly the same in how they respond to your commands. The other terms you may hear, and these are big, big terms of, what you see in, a lot of videos, and you might read about, and you might look at research, and it's very confusing. So those terms, one side is what you might hear is overactive, or tight, or high tone, or spasm, or hypertonicity, right? Those are all terms that you might hear that are associated with a tight or upregulated pelvic floor. And the basic thing to know, even though you might hear all those different terms, is it refers to a pelvic floor that usually is a pelvic floor that's tight or has difficulty. Let's say one person might have difficulty urinating, peeing if they have a tight floor. They might have pain at the pelvic floor. They might have pain in their back. They might have pain in all different body parts associated with the pelvis when we've got a tight pelvic floor, because a tight pelvic floor can refer pain outward to other areas. So that's one basic group. Then there's another group that you hear is underactive, low tone, weak, loose, hypotonic. That all belongs to a group of conditions where you might have something more like prolapse or urinary incontinence. So these are terms where the pelvic floor is kind of what we call weak or loose and has difficulty, holding our pelvic floor up. So like we talked about in our first video and in the book, we talk about a pelvic floor that's able to do things or might be too ready to do things in that hypertonic overactive tone group, and the hypotonic, it can't quite do things like hold back urine or pee. So you can start to see that there are two groups here of muscle issues, and they have got a lot of different terms, but know they more or less belong in that same group. So It is important to remember that just because you have urinary incontinence doesn't mean you necessarily have a weak or hypotonic pelvic floor. And just because you have a tight floor, you can't have incontinence. In fact, a lot of people actually have both at the same time. And the way I describe that to my patients is, how can you possibly have both? Is what we think is, if we've got a tight biceps, a tight muscle here, then that tight muscle, if we hold it like that for 24 hours, at the end of 24 hours, that kind of be tight, it would be uncomfortable. We might even have difficulty opening the arm up altogether. Now, if we do that 24/7, so all day long for days on end, after a while, that muscle stops functioning normally and it actually starts to lose some strength. And at that point, we may have some strength where we've still been able to move it a little bit, but we lose strength through the rest of the range. So that muscle can actually become weak even though it's tight and it's painful. And again, that's where a lot of patients are, is they have this tight floor that is weak. Now, you'd never walk around all day long with your muscle like that. It would look a little bit silly. But at the pelvic floor, you do indeed hold it tight, and you don't know you're doing that. So a lot of people come in with this tension that they have no idea that they're holding their pelvic floor tight and they can't relax it out, and they're weak. So now you can see it can be all of those things together at one time, unfortunately causing a multitude of symptoms that can be very confusing to people. So hopefully that's a little more understandable that you can actually have these two different kinds of things at the same time. So, once before I mentioned in the videos, and I do talk about it a lot in the book, that this may be why pelvic floor contractions over and over again are not necessarily the right thing to do. And a pelvic PT is going to be able to assess that, figure it out, give you the right exercises, teach you how to relax if that need be, and only then maybe teach you how to strengthen. So we've got to figure that out, tease out what category do you belong in. So even if you've got all this terminology, someone really needs to figure out exactly what's going on in order to help you best. So again, that's talked about in the book, The Musculoskeletal Mystery, How to Solve Your Pelvic Floor Symptoms. And the book can be found on Amazon and on Desert Harvest, where you can also find other great products. So looking forward to seeing